that because, quite frankly, we've been kidnapped as a country, as a world for we've been kidnapped by COVID, right? Coronavirus 19. We can't go where we want. We can't do what we want. And we certainly can't do it with the same number of people that we could do it with before. So we have been kidnapped. Joyful day. My name is Andrea Lyons. I'm the CEO of All About Presentation, which is an international event company where we produce, plan, manage, and execute extraordinary events for corporations and, large corporations and government agencies. We've been around since 2008. And in fact, at its infancy, I actually started All About Presentation and submitted a letter of resignation to my then current employer in October of 2008. And in November of 2008, that was the start of the Great Recession. So basically the bottom fell out. And so I know a little bit about weathering the storms of business, especially in the event industry. But I've been doing All About Presentation as my full-time job for the past 12 years. I haven't had any other source of employment. In 2009, All About Presentation made $27,000, a whopping $27,000. And in 2019, we grossed over 100-fold that 2009 amount. So I've learned a little bit in that time period. And one of the biggest things that I've learned about weathering any type of storm is having an incredible team. And so we've invested tremendously in the training and development of our people over the course of time. We've built an incredible training team. And the goal is at All About Presentation to have the best trained people on the planet for events. And so it's been a sizable investment in that process. But today, the reason why I'm doing this video is because of the years of training and development that we've put into our people. I wanted to create a video of something that I think would be, or some content that I think would be really, really, really helpful to people at this time. This certainly a challenging time as the world deals with COVID-19. And to help me today in doing that is actually a former All About Presentation team member, Ameera Vines. She was with All About Presentation from 2013 to 2019, so about 6 years. And she's since gone on to other opportunities. But what we're going to talk about today is so important. It is about how to handle a crisis and how to maintain your sanity within a crisis and how to lead and challenge and problem solve during challenging times. And so, Ameera, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so happy to have you. The training that we do at All About Presentation is You've Been Kidnapped. Okay? The purpose of the training is how to make decisions in a very intense situation, right? When you have all the resources you need, when you have all the time that you need and all the people that can help you, then it's easy to make decisions. It's an easy time to do that. But what about when lives are at stake or when there's not enough information, when you don't have enough time at your disposal, when you don't have any resources? What do you do then? How do you make decisions then? And that's our training. So it's called You've Been Kidnapped. And for about 2 months, Ameera, you correct me if I'm wrong, for Ameera's training, it was about 2 months. Every day I would come into the office and I would say, Ameera, you've been kidnapped. What do you do? And so I wanted to kind of walk through the process of You've Been Kidnapped. And so I'm going to turn it over a little bit to you, Ameera, and invite you into the conversation. But Ameera, I don't know if you remember, but the first day that we did this exercise, I came in and I said, Ameera, you've been kidnapped. What do you do? Do you remember your answer at that time?
Well, my first answer, which actually has not changed, was pray. That was my first answer. I've been kidnapped, pray. Mind you, I did not know that it was a training exercise at the time. I thought she was serious. So I was like, I'm going to pray.
Okay. Well, I hope you wouldn't think I would kidnap you either. Just come in, Ameera, I'm kidnapping you. Uh, but that is true, and that was her answer. And I thought, well, that is an answer, and it's not a bad answer. It's an answer. And then what else? And we talked about over as the weeks and months developed, we talked about what else do you do and put some legs, if you will, to your first answer. Let's put some legs to it. What's that mean? So we're going to hop right in, and we're going to start with the first one. Ameera, you've been kidnapped. What is the first thing you do?
The first thing I'm doing is I'm assessing the situation. When I'm doing that, the first thing I'm gathering is knowledge. So that's my first key point. I have to be knowledgeable. What do I know versus what do I not know? I think that is very important. And I think we all agree that the more information you have, the better decision that you can make. One thing is we are luckily in a state where we constantly have information coming in. Information is readily available through the internet, through the news. We are no longer in the times where you had to wait an exorbitant amount of time to get new information.
Yeah, no one's waiting on the daily paper. God bless them, though. We love daily papers, but we don't have to wait till the next day even to figure out what's going on. You're right. It's up to the minute, up to the minute information.
And depending on how you look at that, that can be both comforting and it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be anxiety ridden is what it is. It can cause anxiety.
So when I'm doing my gathering of information, and I have to also remember not to forget what I already know. And I think that's something that a lot of people tend to do. They tend to assume that new information automatically negates information that you already have. And that is not the case. A great example of that is the information that we've received about testing kits. Recently, I think it was Monday or Tuesday in the news, they were saying that they have now been able to successfully get the results of a coronavirus test kits quickly, much quicker than they were before. So the very next statement was to expect a spike in positive reports of the coronavirus because they are now able to get that information quickly. Then by the end of the week, I saw a headline that said coronavirus positives quadruple. Now, if I had forgotten that earlier that week, they had said it's going to spike because we have new information quicker, that just seeing that headline could have made me worry, panic, or cause more anxiety than necessary.
The new numbers, the more tests you take, the more positives you find. And I give this caution because I think people misinterpret the number of new cases. They take that number of new cases as if it is reflective of the number of new cases, the spread. It is not. The number of new cases is only reflective of the number of cases you are taking, right? Where our goal is to find the positive cases, because if we find a positive case, we can isolate that person and that stops the spread.
That let me know, okay, this is the information I do know, and just new information about it quadrupling does not negate what they have already said.
But let's say, figuratively speaking, you were actually kidnapped. When we say, what do I know versus what do I don't know? You're saying, we're saying, like, is it day or night outside, right? What can our senses tell us about the situation? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What, am I cold? Am I hot? You know, that can tell me a little bit about the climate of the situation that I'm in. Information is critical. So our senses have to change. You know, it's not just what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we can feel, touch, taste, all of that. Our senses are changing. It's when I bring in information, what do I need to do with that information? And how do I put information together?
Automatically changes how I would react.
one of the things that I did in 2008 during the Great Recession, and I'm sure that there are people doing it now, is they're reacting first and not gathering first, right? So the biggest lesson I learned from 2008 till now is I need to gather information. And I mean, I need to consume it, but keep in a way that is not about panic, right? Or to drive panic to my team members, but in a way to gather information so that I am knowledgeable and I am smart about what's going on. And then how does it impact what we have and what we're doing? As an example of that, it's talking to my clients that I have and asking them what their plans are for COVID-19. How are they responding to situations? Beginning, how seriously is everyone taking this, right? Maybe they know something I don't know. You know, we're talking 2 weeks ago, which would have been early March at the time of this recording. That would have been early March. How seriously are folks taking this? And then it let me know how seriously I need to be taking it, and then how many decisions may come as a result of this. Whether are we talking about moving their events, you know, cancellations, postponements, that sort of thing that we do, and it helps so much to gather information before wholesale deciding whether or not this is a big deal or not, or you know, whether I should say something to my employees about expecting to either be laid off or furloughed or anything like that. It's a one big massive information game. I need to collect as much information before I just get out there and strike and do something. I need to gather information. It's super important to do that. And anxiety comes from the stuff you don't know, right? Like, it's so many things I don't know. If you can whittle that list down and then increase the amount of things you do know, that helps alleviate that panic box, if you will.
There is that risk of information overload.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So especially in today's time, you have to be able to balance, okay, I'm taking in a lot of information. Is it too much information for right now, or is it reliable?
Right. Oh, absolutely. And we talk about that. I'm actually going to release a training, the How to Stay Joyful training, which you might remember. And it's like 6 parts about how to stay joyful, because joy is a choice. And that little background at All About Presentation, our mission is we help our clients express joy. And so we talk about how to be joyful and not in a state of happiness, because right now things are not happy, but you can be joyful in this, and joy is a choice. And so we'll be releasing that, and I'll put it in probably the show notes, about, you know, how to stay joyful. It's a free download. All of this is free. I'm going to give it away for free. Like I said, we've spent years developing some of the best training for event people, because I wanted my team to be the best team. And so I'm going to give it away for free. You can have it. You can take it. Anybody can have it. Anybody can use it. The point is that it's helpful. So good point, Ameera. Thank you so much. So, okay, Ameera, you've been kidnapped. First thing we do, we assess the situation. What's the second thing we do?
So the next thing is I need to manage my time.
Ooh, okay. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
So in the event world, very seldom are you in a crisis and you have for an infinite amount of time to deal with that crisis.
Yeah, I never have. No, it's always right now.
Yeah, usually the timetable is very small. So you have to be able to do multiple things within the time that you have.
Sure.
You have to make sure that the things that you are focusing on are effective. I think one big mistake that people make is if something's on fire to the side of you, you take your eye off of the road in front of you.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna stop you right here. Okay, so you said a couple of things that I like. So figuratively speaking, if we were kidnapped and you're talking about managing your time, the goal of any person who has been kidnapped is to get out alive. You're talking about time. It's a sense of urgency, right? So if you were figuratively kidnapped, you know, no one is kidnapping you forever. That's not what exists. When they send out Amber Alerts, you have a narrow window of time to find somebody before, the prospects start getting a little more bleak, to say it nicely. So it's creating that sense of urgency. And I can't even underscore how important that is, as you're saying, Amir, because a lot of people can very quickly get kind of like that, like in the ocean. What's that thing? It just bounces up and down in the ocean. What is that thing called? A buoy. Yes. They're like buoys in the ocean. They're like, here, we don't really have any direction. We're just kind of going with wherever the wave takes us. And you get stuck in this like gray matter and you have no sense of time. And that is so important that you bring that up, because when you get into that state, you're no longer moving forward. And that to me says you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel either. You also mentioned, if there's a fire over here, you can't like lose sight of the fact there's a fire in front of you. And we call that your 360-degree field of vision. You kind of have to always be scanning, or in the military, they always say, keep your head on a swivel. I think for the folks that are watching this, when we talk about managing your time effectively, if you feel that you have gained more time because you are, in a holding pattern of sorts, the first question I would say to you is, how are you using that time? Are you spending it on, Netflix and, PlayStation, or are you using that time to be creative and think of new things and do new things, trying things you haven't necessarily tried before? Or are you just waiting until the winds turn, right? Until the tide of the battle changes. One of the things I think is a practical matter that would be a great suggestion, and this is what all the experts tell you to do, is one, stay on schedule. Stay on schedule. If you went to work at 8:30, you still go to work at 8:30. You need to get up, be dressed like you would go to work, and you go at 8:30. Now, when you have the kids with you, which a lot of us do, when you have to put them on their same schedule, what can be altered, which is, kind of a blessing, if you will, is that you can now eat lunch with your kids, right? So if you normally take lunch around 12 or 1, and that's kind of when you kind of want to do a little lunch break, then they can do that same thing with you. But the key is that you keep a schedule, you keep a routine, because that is how you're managing your time effectively in the state that we're in. So I'm gonna, if we can, we're gonna go to the next one. Mm-hmm. Cool. So Ameera, you've been kidnapped. What do? The first thing we know to do is assess the situation, right? What do I know? What don't I know, right? And let's give ourselves credit for what we know, right? Let's start going, okay, here's what I know. I know a lot of things. There's this much that I don't know, but I know a whole lot over here. So what do I know and what don't I know? What am I going to do with my time? The shot clock has started. How do I best manage the time that I have? All right. And then what's number 3?
So the third thing is using my tools. Finding out what my tools are and using them.
Using my tools. Okay. Tell me more about that. What's that mean?
So I think we can all agree that we have seen what happens, what has happened with the coronavirus, by the lack of toiletries and cleaning products that are available to us now in our stores. Those are tools. It's knowing what tools and when to use them that is also cannot be forgotten.
So I guess what I'm thinking is, what you're saying is, do we have the right tools?
Exactly.
For the situation we're actually in?
Right. So I think people have focused on toilet paper and hand sanitizer, but what if you do get sick? And what if it's not even coronavirus? What if you get a severe headache? What if you do get the flu? Okay.
So figuratively speaking, when we do our training exercise and we say you've been kidnapped and we go through managing tools and all of that, we'll say if you're bound, is there something around you that can get you unbound? Is there a way for you to count because you need to count how many days you've been kidnapped, right? Because sometimes time, as we talked about earlier, time changes when you're under intense environments. That is like a fact, right? So what you're saying then is, what I don't need if I am kidnapped is, like, I may not be able to find use for a typewriter, but what are the tools that are at my disposal, and what are the best tools that I need for right now in the situation that I'm in? So you mentioned toilet paper, and I just wrote down a note. I jotted down a note that maybe an even more effective tool would be air filters, right? Like I, in your home. So did we go out and change all of our air filters, which would be a more effective tool in terms of making sure that you have clean air, right? If depending on how, coronavirus spreads, and there's like up for debate on that, but that's something that you would want to use as a better tool in the situation than hoarding up something else, right? Or Tylenol, as you mentioned. Is there something that can be helpful? Do you have Tylenol? Which, by the way, public service and for public service announcement, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The France has said that NSAIDs are not particularly effective with coronavirus, and in fact can exacerbate problems. Again, that's up for discussion. We're not doctors on this, but I thought I would mention that, because normally if I get the flu, I take a leave like you wouldn't believe, and it works great. But that is not what they're saying should happen. Now, again, I don't want to be sued by Bayer, who makes aspirin, because listen, I don't know. I'm not that person. It's just, if you go to people who are experts in their field, that's one of the challenges they're saying. It needs more scientific evidence and that sort of thing. But the preferred, if you are going to take a pain reliever, is to take Tylenol, right? So do we have Tylenol? Acetaminophen versus, your naproxens or your ibuprofens, which their brand labels are, Motrin, Aleve, that kind of thing. So just wanted to insert that in there. As far as tools go, that's a great point about, do you have the right tools for the challenge that you're trying to solve? And then I think from a practical matter, Mira, is also money, right? So do you have money? Because I think that's a lot of, if you're talking about business owners or small business owners, big business owners, Delta Airlines, money. Do you have the money or the cash flow you need to stay in this, right? That's everybody's problem. So if we're looking at cash flow, I think we got to talk about there's programs out there for loans and that sort of thing. That you got to look at, is this a potential tool that I can utilize to help with cash flow issues? I know SBA loans have increased almost, I know they got a lot of states covered for disaster assistance loans, very low rate. You have about a year to pay to make your first payment. So it's an option, right? It's a tool. So what are the tools that I have at my disposal to help me get out of the situation that I'm in? That's very good. You've been kidnapped. First thing you do, or what's the first thing you do? We know it is to assess the situation. The second thing we want to do is manage time. And then the third thing we want to do is use our tools. What's the fourth thing we want to do?
By this point, we are weighing the risks, consequences, and obstacles that I might face.
Ooh, okay. What's that mean?
So every decision, action, reaction, there is going to be a risk, a consequence, and potentially create a new obstacle or get rid of that obstacle. So a good example for this one is, I currently live with someone that is is part of the high-risk population for contracting coronavirus. In the office that I work in is a pretty large office. They're not confined spaces, so it's an open concept. And then we also have clients consistently coming in to the office as well. The risk that I had to take was going to work. That is not an option to not work at this present time. So when I did have that risk, I had to quickly gain more information about, okay, how can I mitigate that risk of bringing it within my home? So that included being extremely careful while I was in the office, constantly washing my hands, wiping down my surfaces. When I come into the home, changing my clothes as quickly as possible, making sure that I'm continuously washing my hands and sanitizing things within my home, so that even though we are keeping that person in a high risk population inside the home so that she does not come into contact with people outside, it doesn't mean that I can't bring it home. So being able to, with the information that I have, being able to mitigate that risk so that I do not create an obstacle unnecessarily or
Yeah.
consequence that I'm not willing to have or pay that consequence.
Or that's great. So, and when we do training for it, so we say like, so say you get unbound and you're figuratively kidnapped and you get unbound and you see a window. The first thing one might think is, I'm going out the window. Before you go out the window, you might want to take a second and figure out what's outside of the window. You have to calculate the risk, right? What's outside of the risk, outside of that window? It could be soft landing and it could not be a soft landing. How high is the window from the ground? We look at, like, if you're in a window and you say you manage to get out of a window and escape, but you're in the middle of a desert, are you taking your chances on a desert, or if you're just in unfamiliar territory? Then you have to kind of get a little bit more information before you take even a calculated risk, having the most information you can. I think as a practical matter, when we talk about assessing risk, going back to even SBA disaster loans for COVID-19 as an example, that's still a debt, right? The airlines have to pay theirs back. Small businesses have to pay theirs back as well. It is a debt. And so is this a calculated risk we're willing to take on our business if we want to stay in business? It's a tool and it may be helpful to stay in business, but there are businesses where taking on a debt it's not even practical. It's not even at all practical. Before we hurry up and do a thing, whatever our action is, we have to fully understand there are consequences on the other side of it, no matter what that action is. That's somebody's law of physics, right? Third law of physics, maybe, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then, we want to make sure that we understand what the reaction part of that is. Ameera, you've been kidnapped. What's the first thing we do? We're going to be knowledgeable. We're going to, by assessing the situation, we're going to make sure we're managing our time. We're going to use our tools. We're going to weigh out the risks and what are the obstacles. Basically, what is the reaction to my action? What is the fifth one we want to understand?
The fifth one is adjusting accordingly. As we gain more information, as we gain or lose time, as we use tools or run out of tools, as new risks and consequences come, our plan has to change. And the quicker you can adjust and the more willing you are to adjust your plan, the better off you'll be. An example of this is we once had a great event. It was fabulous, well attended, hundreds of people, and it happened in the middle of a tropical storm. We had our team had a plan to manage that. We had been following the tropical storm closely, and we had a plan. During the event, it was literally right on top of us. So we had to very quickly change our plan when we got the word from the venue that was actually, there were a lot of windows and glass in that venue.
That's what I remember. I think it was there was beautiful place, but what made it beautiful is that it was all glass.
Exactly. And
which is not conducive to a tropical storm.
Exactly. So we were told in the middle of the event that we had less than an hour to evacuate. So that changed our plan that we had worked on with all the information and the time and the tools that we had for that full week. We had to change that at the drop of a hat to condense everything to evacuate hundreds of people in less than an hour. And our team was able to successfully do that because we all stayed calm, but we were also willing to adjust our plan. We went into our plan knowing that it might change with more information. And being aware of that and being willing to not only adjust, but being willing to take in new information. What you don't want to do is create a plan with the information that you have and not take anything else in. Then you have a plan that might not work based on the circumstances that you now find yourself in. So how quickly you can adjust and how willing you are to adjust are huge keys to being able to get out of a crisis alive.
Yeah. You know, when we are figuratively kidnapped and we talk about, you know, making an escape plan, your escape plan is only as good as the information you have, right? And so there's going to be unexpected things that happen that come up. You know, nefarious characters can get in your way and slow down your progress of escape. And so you have to have a plan for those nefarious characters. One in that example in particular, Ameera, what I remember, we had several hundred people. And it wasn't like we were being reckless either. It was no one knew the direction or path of the storm. There was a lot of money at stake. A lot of money had already been spent. A lot of people were extraordinarily excited about the event. And for a while, you know, when we made the go decision, you know, that the path of the storm, we weren't in it. So it was going to be okay until that day happened. And all of a sudden, I remember the storm like jetted up to the left or whatever a little bit, and we became directly in the path of that storm that day. And so again, we did have an hour in terms of our evacuation, which I remember was very, very, very tough, because by evacuating, you're sending people out into it, right? So then we're concerned for safety, and is there safety checks that we need to do with each other and our attendees, because it's necessary to do that. We want to make sure everybody gets home okay as well, or gets back to wherever they're going okay. So, you know, that was a very, very tough event. But what that reminds me of is that for everybody who's made it this far in the video and they're still watching, is the word of encouragement that I would give is that this is not your first time with adversity either. It's not our first time. This just looks different. It's wrapped up in a different set of clothes, right? Different outfit, but same adversity. So we've been through things. All of us have been through things before where we have come out of it and we did well coming out of it. If you're still here and you're still alive and you're still breathing, that means you made it. So if you made it then, you can make it now. And I would just say the big thing is that this too will pass and you will come out again successful and whole, and you will be made whole. I'm certain of it because you did it before. So just to remember that all is not lost in this situation. I would just say that as a word of encouragement. I don't know, Ameera, if you have a word of encouragement for the people.
I think my word of encouragement would be, if your leader is panicking, what does that say for everyone else? So you have to be calm. You have to stay calm. And it doesn't matter. Everyone is a leader in some part of their life, whether it's with your friends, family, loved ones, at work, in church. Everyone has that leadership position in some form. And when you are leading other people, you have to be able to be calm and make good decisions that are not based off of emotion. So that would be my final nugget to take home. This is not the first time that you've made these types of decisions. It's just you feel it more because there's pressure behind it.
Ameera, thank you so much for sitting with us for this spell. I'm surprised you remember all this. I know you've been gone, you haven't been gone that long, but it's been a while since we did that training for sure. It's been a couple of years, but I'm glad that it's useful to you now. For everyone else, you all hang in there. This too shall pass, just like everything else has before it. Nothing, none of us, last forever. So if you enjoyed this video, please share it. Please let us know. We'll be dropping a lot more content in general. Again, I'm going to run through all about presentations, our entire suite of training, because I know the ones that there's some things that are very helpful that could be useful in this time. It will be free of charge. It'll always be free of charge for you to download or watch videos with us. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.